David Martinez moved to McDowell County, West Virginia in 2018 to work as a social worker for the regional health department. The county had once been the heart of coal country, producing more coal than any other county in America, but those days were long gone. What remained was poverty, decay, and a landscape scarred by decades of extraction. David's job was to visit isolated households and connect them with available services, which meant driving deep into hollows where the roads turned to dirt and the nearest neighbor might be 2 miles away. It was during one of these visits in March of 2019 that David discovered the wash house. This is the continuation of the story. But before we unveil this story, comment below where you are watching from. And if you enjoy this story with a moment of joy, don't forget to subscribe. He'd been given directions to check on an elderly woman living alone in a place called Bradshaw, a former coal camp that now consisted of maybe a dozen occupied homes scattered among hundreds of rotting structures. The woman's house was at the end of a narrow hollow, and David's sedan bottomed out twice on the rutted road before he reached it. After his visit, as he was turning around to leave, he noticed a building he hadn't seen on the way in. It was tucked back against the hillside, a long, low structure with a corrugated metal roof and brick walls stained black with what looked like soot. A faded sign above the door read, "Bradshaw Coal Company Wash House." David had read about these facilities. They were where miners would come at the end of their shifts to shower and change out of their filthy work clothes before going home. Most coal camps had them. This one looked like it had been abandoned for 40 or 50 years, but the door was slightly ajar, and David's curiosity got the better of him. He parked and walked over. The door protested with a shriek of rusted hinges as he pulled it open wider. Inside, the wash house was exactly as it had been left when the mine closed. Rows of metal lockers lined both walls, their doors hanging open, some still containing rotted work clothes and old lunch pails. The shower room was at the far end, an open space with rusted shower heads protruding from the walls at regular intervals. Wooden benches, gray with age and moisture, ran down the center of the room. The floor was concrete, cracked and uneven, with drains set into it at regular intervals. The whole place smelled of mildew and something else, something chemical and harsh that made David's eyes water. Old coal dust, probably, mixed with whatever cleaning agents they'd used. David walked slowly through the locker room, his footsteps echoing off the metal surfaces. Some of the lockers still had names painted on them. J. Workman, R. Ellis, T. Hawkins, men who'd worked underground, breathing in coal dust day after day, probably dying young from black lung or mine collapses. He was reading the names when he heard the water start. It was just one shower head at first, on the far end of the shower room. Water sputtered from the pipe, brown and rust-colored, then began flowing steadily. David walked toward it, confused. There was no reason for the plumbing to still be functional. The building hadn't been connected to water service in decades. But as he got closer, a second shower head started, then a third. Within seconds, all 20 shower heads in the room were running, filling the space with the sound of rushing water and raising a mist that smelled of sulfur and decay. David should have left. Every instinct told him to turn around and walk out. But he was transfixed, watching the water pour from those rusted fixtures, splashing onto the cracked concrete floor where it swirled down the drains. Then he saw the first one, a figure, indistinct in the mist, standing under one of the showers. It was the shape of a man, but wrong somehow, the proportions off. Too thin, too still. David blinked, and there were more of them. A dozen figures now, standing under the showers, motionless, the water running over them but not seeming to touch them. They were translucent, like shadows cast by a light he couldn't see. One of the figures turned its head toward David. Where its face should have been, there was only darkness, a void that seemed to pull at his vision. The figure raised one arm, pointing at him, and David heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Coughing. It started with one figure and spread to the others, a chorus of wet, rattling coughs, the sound of lungs destroyed by decades of breathing in coal dust. The coughing grew louder, more violent, and the figures began to move toward him, still translucent, still not quite there, but advancing through the mist. David ran. He slipped on the wet floor and caught himself on one of the wooden benches, his hand sinking into the rotted wood. Behind him, the coughing followed, and beneath it, he could hear voices, whispering, pleading. The same words over and over, "Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe." He made it out the door and back to his car, his hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. As he drove away, he looked back once in his rearview mirror. The wash house stood there against the hillside, and through its grimy windows, he could see light. The showers were still running. David reported the incident to his supervisor, who looked at him like he'd lost his mind. But 2 weeks later, David was in the McDowell County Historical Society researching something unrelated when he mentioned the wash house. The elderly volunteer working the desk went pale. She told David that the Bradshaw wash house had been the site of a tragedy in 1958. A section of the mine had collapsed during a shift change, killing 18 men. Their bodies were brought to the wash house, where they were cleaned before being released to their families. According to local legend, the wash house showers would turn on by themselves on the anniversary of the collapse. David checked the date. His visit had been March 17th. The collapse had happened March 17th, 1958. He never went back to that hollow.